Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the session, Marketing the Most Important Product of All, You, presented by Patricia Belli. Patricia is the Associate Director of the Human Resources at Meredith Corporation. Throughout her career, Patricia has focused on building teams, trust, and organizational effectiveness, working for iconic brands such as Apple, JetBlue, and Delta Airlines. An Ohio native, Patricia received a BA in International Business Management from Marietta College before discovering her true passion and obtaining a master's in Human Resources from Capella University. If there is one thing that working in aviation has taught Patricia, it's that the sky is the limit. She's excited to take you on this journey to reach the heights of your potential through developing and growing your personal brand. So please join me in welcoming Patricia Belli. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. I saw those claps, those distant claps. Thank you, all of you. It's such a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to dive in. So the first thing I'm going to ask of all of you is for your participation today. And so I know it can, we tend to do different things at the same time, but there will be times that I ask you to participate in poll questions. There will be times that I ask you to drop things in the chat. And so I would ask for your participation today. And of course, we will have question and answer at the end. So today we're going to define a personal brand, what the word personal brand means, not necessarily develop your personal brand, although I think we can lay a good foundation. But the process for discovering your personal brand could take days, it could take weeks, it could take years. But I'm optimistic that if you really focus on it, that you can figure out that personal brand in a matter of days, if not sooner. We're going to explore components of building a personal brand. So what are the factors that you need to consider to make that determination? Then we're going to do an exercise to think about those things and how to start establishing a personal brand. And then we're going to talk the bulk of our conversation about leveraging your personal brand for successful career advancement. So we're going to start with a little game. In the chat, I want you to just type one adjective that you think of when you see this brand, and then the word good or bad. Do you consider this brand good or bad? So one adjective, and then the word good or bad. I see cheap and bad, bad, fun, and good. Okay, painful, bad, aging, bad, cheap, and bad. They're going fast, but I see a lot of bads, and I saw 3 or 4, 5 or 6 goods in there. Overall, the consensus, oh, not worth your money. Oh, painful. Overall, the consensus is that Spirit is not a good brand and that it's not a good experience for its customers. Let's do one more. Your brand is CNN, one adjective, and then good or bad. Trusted, biased, bad, reliable, good, engaging, good, fake news, bad, detailed, good, smart, good, trusted, fair, bad, mass market, verbose, but okay. So mixed feelings on CNN. It sounds like we have a little of good and bad for CNN, and that's understandable with a news source. And so for both of these brands, I haven't said anything about them except asked for your opinion. And everyone very easily had an opinion, whether it was good, whether it was bad, and what words come to mind. And the same is true for you as individuals. You have a personal brand, whether you know it or not, accept it or not. When people think of you, there are specific things that they're thinking of, hopefully good things. So we're going to define a personal brand as a widely recognized and largely uniform perception of an individual based on their experience, expertise, actions, or achievements. These 4 words are really important. Your experience, so what you've accomplished, what you're able to contribute, your expertise, what you're really good at, what you're known for, your actions, things that you have done, or in some cases have not done, and then your achievements, what you're able to accomplish with this personal brand. So these are the factors that people think of when they're thinking of you, and this is how you can control and change your personal brand through these pieces. So let's start with a poll question just to get a sense of where individuals are. Yes or no, I have a good understanding of my personal brand. And the poll should launch here shortly. Yes or no, I have a good understanding of my personal brand. All right, so a vast majority of individuals have voted, and the majority are saying, no, I don't really have a good sense of my brand, which is to be expected because I don't think individuals think of themselves as a marketable product, but that is how we should be thinking of ourselves. And let's talk about the impact of that. So brand identity components are interests and values, value, singular, authenticity, and differentiation. These 4 pieces can help you think about what is my personal brand. Let's talk about interests and values. And I see Shanitria, I see you're frantically taking notes, which I do approve of and applaud, but you will have access to a copy of this deck after the presentation. So don't feel that you have to capture everything because you will have it in your own hands as well. So interests and values. Interests really talk about things like what do you like to do and what are you good at? And we'll talk about value in a moment, but that's critical. So it's not good enough that I like to do something. I also need to be good at it and there has to be value in it. I'll give you an example. I like to sing. I love karaoke. I'm so bad at it. If you made me angry, I would sing as a punishment. So I'm not good at it. I can't add value in it, but I do like to do it. So really thinking about what do you like to do and what are you good at? And then where can you add value? The other thing to think about in terms of values is what is important to you? What do you value and what companies share those values so that you're not working at cross purposes and trying to achieve your function at work? And what are your deal breakers? What are things that if a company did or you had knowledge of that you would walk away, that is unacceptable to you? So really thinking about what am I good at? What do I like? And what is something that's just not going to give me any energy or life? Now we talk about value. So what value can your brand add to a company? So I will give you, as an example, my brand is people and how I care about people for our organization, for our culture, and how we show up for our people and protect their experience. If I were applying for an accountant job, that is not meaningful. No one cares if I care for our people. I work in human resources, and so it works. But if I worked in accounting, then I could say, you know, I'm very detail oriented, and that would make sense for my brand. And then how can you articulate that value in a meaningful way? And so if I'm trying to sell myself as a candidate, as an accountant candidate, and I say that I'm an ideal candidate because I am detail oriented, you know, it's generic, it's not helpful. But if I said that I'm an ideal candidate because I am detail oriented in a way that has allowed me to catch errors before they're processed or caught during an audit, and this has saved the company wasted hours on corrections and nearly $200,000 in fines that we would have been assessed. Now you are showing me that you can add value to my company. I see what you've done in the past, and now I have an idea of what you may accomplish or contribute in the future. And so how can you articulate that value in a way that is meaningful to others? Authenticity, be yourself and live your brand. I had to quote Dr. Seuss on this one. Today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. No one else in the world has what you have, and that's you. No one else is you. And what you bring to the table is so special. I have to tell you, I interviewed a candidate about 2 weeks ago, and she read me, you know, I asked her about her experience that translated into the role, and she read me something that she had pre-typed. And I want people to be prepared for interviews, but the way she read it, I will just demonstrate briefly. She said, in 1984, I started my career working in a farm. At that farm, I was responsible for picking the corn. When I picked the corn, I, as an interviewer, found myself challenged to listen, and I really cared. I just felt like what you're doing shows no on this authenticity. Like, I have no idea who you are, and I can't assess your motivational fit for this company, for this job, for this team, because I have no sense of you. And I segued and asked her questions where you can't possibly have prepared the answer, but there was something so robotic and unauthentic about her that ultimately, on the basis of motivational fit alone, she was a no. So it's really important to know who you are and bring that to an interview. And when you do that, you set yourself up for success later down the line, should something happen. So I will give you an example. I've already told you my brand is, no matter what, our people will always come first. And I worked at Delta, and when the pandemic hit, there was a day where we let go all of our vendors in one day, no notice. We were just burning money left and right, and we had to make some tough decisions. And so we let go all of our vendors. And I knew people would be alarmed and concerned. And so I went up into the operation to make sure that I could answer questions and be a resource for our team. And I was up there for about 6 hours. And then when I came back to my office, I realized I had missed about 4 meetings that had been scheduled same day. And so my manager and I connected at the end of the day, and she asked if I had any feedback on the meetings. And I said, honestly, I didn't go to the meetings. I didn't have my phone with me. I wasn't aware of the meetings. And she was very upset with me. And I apologized for the frustration, but I said, you know who I am. Of course, I'm going to go be with our people when I know we're delivering shock after shock, and they're going to be stressed. They're going to be worried. I'm in the operation with our people. That is my first priority, always. And she was disappointed that I wasn't at the meetings, but what are you going to do? Are you going to write me up because I care about our employees? You can't. And so there's something really powerful about figuring out a brand and really sticking true to it, because it guides your behavior, but it also means I can kind of predict what you're going to do. Like, anyone could have known Patricia's in the operation if you cannot find her in her office. Moving too fast. All right, differentiation. This piece is key. What separates you from other candidates? So it is a common question in interviews to be asked, why this role, why this company, why you, right? We can all agree that's a common question. And people give all sorts of different answers, but what's really critical is giving an answer that, number one, showcases your brand, but number two, shows value that you can add that no one else can. And so Sanchita mentioned I work for Meredith. If you're not familiar with the brand, they own about 40 publications, including Entertainment Weekly, People, all of these really wonderful brands. And so I interviewed someone to work at People magazine, and I asked her, why do you want this job? And she talked about working with celebrities and having access to all these famous people. And then I asked her, what is your favorite article that you've ever written or interview that you've done? And she told me about this article that she wrote about Beyonce's tour. And she said that it was the most clicked article of the day. And she felt like everyone was looking at her like she was a big deal. And I hate to use the word repulsed, but it is the right word. I was repulsed by the answer, because if you think about who People is as a brand, that is a brand that wants to bring humanity to these people that are otherwise inaccessible. I don't know what it's like to have $80 million to buy some clothes and raising a kid with 3 nannies. I can't relate to that. What we can relate to is, what is it like to be a working mom, to not have enough hours in the day, to try to balance work and family. That's the true story behind Beyonce. It's not about she's a big star and she's on tour, she's rich. And so when you think about what People does, it is humanizing these individuals. And so for her to say, I want access to celebrities and I want to be famous in my own right, this isn't the job for you, because there is no alignment between the brand's priorities and your priorities. Conversely, I will tell you, another candidate told me almost that exact same thing. She said, I just love sharing people's stories and bringing light to issues that I feel otherwise don't get enough attention and are so important. And that was like the third answer she gave me. And I almost felt like we can stop the interview right now. I'm sold. But we still had another 20 minutes. So I kept talking to her, but those kinds of answers change minds, move hearts, just sell yourself as a candidate who is different, because anyone can write. There's millions of people working in journalism, but what makes you special? What are you bringing? How can you showcase your brand? Let's take a moment for reflection. So I want you to consider these questions And when and if you are ready and feel comfortable, share one answer to a red question and one answer to a blue question in the chat. What brings you joy? What do you excel at? What have others recognized you for in a positive way? What lowers your engagement? And which responsibilities or tasks cause you to feel burned out? So take a moment and reflect on those questions. I have some music while you reflect. Elaine, your kids, for the red and the blue. I'm going to give another 30 seconds and then we'll talk through some of these. You all make me feel so happy. So I'm actually in New York. I don't know that I mentioned that. And I suspect a great number of you are on the West Coast. But some of these answers to things that give you joy, that bring you energy, that you feel like you can invest a lot of passion in, are so positive. And that's really where you want to focus your energy and your effort and your strength. And seeing some of these just makes me want to poach you from your current employer. But if you're on the West Coast, I don't want to drag you all the way to the East. And then when we talk about these blue questions and you're giving some of these answers of what is stealing your energy and making you feel burned out, I would encourage you to take some time to really reflect on the job that you are doing now or the job that you are preparing for, and what balance of things that build you up and delight you would be in that work, and what balance of things that really drag you down and steal your energy would be in that work. And then I would ask you to ask yourself a really tough question, which is this a job I want to do? Because I feel like that time when people would get a job and they didn't like it, but you would just go to work anyway, and you would do that for 30 years, that time has passed. This day, it is normal for people to have a job, find another job that they like better, and leave. Have a job, this place will give me better opportunities, and leave. And so this time where people are at a job for 3 to 5 years and it feels like it's not really that long, it's plenty long for the time that we're living in. And you really want to find something that satisfies you. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, do something you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That feeling is incomparable. The satisfaction that you feel, your ability to not be irritated or bothered by things when you enjoy your work, when you like your coworkers, when you're doing things that fulfill you for the greater part of your day. So I would challenge you to think about, am I in the right place? And if your answer is no, let's talk about how you can get out of there. I've got some tips and tricks for you. But first, how about a fun poll? I use the word fun a lot. It's just a poll. I have a sense of how to determine my personal brand. So not that you've done it, but that you have a sense of how you can determine your personal brand. Still so many no's. You're breaking my heart. 50-50. Oh, the yeses. Oh, we'll say 50-50. You can see the poll, right? You can see the responses coming up on the screen. Oh, only I can see it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you could see this. So right now it's at 53% yes, have a sense of how to determine personal brand, and 47% no, do not have a good sense of how to determine personal brand. And so what I'm going to encourage you to do, it was mentioned that you would have access to these slides after the presentation, and you will. But what I would encourage you to do, if you feel like I still can't figure out what my personal brand is go back and really just spend some time sitting in those questions. And so I'll give you an example. My sister is at a job that, well, for a year and a half, at a job that she hated. And I said, okay, let's get you to a new job that you like. Talk to me about your personal brand so I can try and match you with the right opportunity. And she said, I don't have a personal brand. And I said, you're telling me there's nothing that motivates you, that drives you, that gives you joy? She said, no, I just want to make more money. And I said, okay, well, I own a law firm and we are hiring an executive assistant. The job pays $100,000 a year plus a $50,000 bonus. If things go well, they typically do. Are you interested in this job? She said, absolutely, I am. I said, I should also tell you, we make our money by defrauding elderly individuals. Are you still interested in this job? And she said, well, no, obviously I don't want to work for you if you're defrauding like older people. And I said, so you do have a sense of boundaries. There are some things you will not do. Money is not the motivator. You want it, but it's not what's driving you. It's not what's going to get you out of bed in the morning. It's not a job that you would do for free. And so really thinking about, where do I get my energy from? So interesting. Michael said, I feel like I know my personal brand, but I don't know if others see me that way. Michael, there is a slide where we will talk about this, but it really is asking so that people can tell you their perception and their truth. But we'll talk about it in just a moment. It might be like right now. Yes, if you intend to remain with your current employer, the first thing you see here is be vocal. And this is for you, Michael, and any person who feels like, I think this is my brand, but I don't know. Talk to your manager and say, I would love to get a sense of how you view me. I would love to understand where you think my strengths are. I would love to understand where you think I'm adding value to the company or where I could add more value. And so you want to use people who not only have a perception of you, but who also have a say in your success to understand what they think. I can't tell you how many backdoor vetoes I've heard leaders talk about, where someone will apply for a leadership position and the leader will say, no, they're not ready, and will discard them as a candidate. And so, of course, my question is, if they're not ready, do they know that? Have you told them that? Have you given them the feedback? Have you given them specific examples of why they're not ready? Because they think they are, and there is a disconnect if they think you're ready and you think they're not. And if you don't vocalize what's wrong, they're just going to be upset. And it's like, people prefer an honest truth, even if it's hard to hear, versus you telling them what they want to hear, but they can't ever get ahead. They can't ever accomplish anything. And so you need a trusted leader to be that advocate. And I use the word trusted because sometimes we don't trust our leaders. And so if you don't trust someone, this is not the person that I would ask for feedback, because they're already biased in their view of you. If there are other coworkers that you have, peers that you have, that you're comfortable with, that you trust, ask them, how do you perceive me as an employee? Where do you think my strengths are? Do you think I'm well placed in human resources, in my case, or wherever it is you are? But ask those questions and see what others perceive. And it could just be some brand tweaking, how you're representing yourself, what projects you're taking on, how you're communicating, how you're delivering. Or it could be, this is not the best place for you. This is not the place where you will see your ultimate success. Leverage informational interviews. These are critical if you're staying internal. So internal people have a benefit that externals don't have, and that's that people will actually be nice to you. And so if you reach out to someone, even if it's on another team or elsewhere in your company, and just say, hey, I see you posted make up a job. You posted a marketing position. And let's say at the time I'm in legal, and I was to say, I'm interested in a career in marketing and would love to just pick your brain about how you got started and some helpful things you would have liked to know early in your career, to just set up some time to, number one, gain exposure. Because when you apply for a position, they're going to remember, oh, that's right, Patricia was interested. I remember her. They'll get a sense of you as an individual. Oh, I did like her energy, or I would love her for our team. And they will also have a good sense of your experience. So the informational interview is number one, to get information, but number two, it's kind of to sell yourself. And so you go into the informational interview and they say, oh yeah, we're always looking for people who have X, Y, and Z skills. Oh, that's fantastic. I've been doing X, Y, and Z. So you always want to make sure they know, like, oh, I'm your right person when you're hiring or when you post. Like, I have everything you need. Or if you don't have what they need, you can at least start to grow in the areas where you need to make that success. Join employee resource groups and business resource groups. So most companies have these teams. I've been at Meredith for 6 months now, and my client group is about 300 people. But I know about 1,000 people at the company, and that is specifically because I've joined every single employee resource group in order to network. There's people at other brands in other states that I may never meet in person, but they know my name, they have a sense of my brand. And even when I attend a webinar, I'm always busy writing things in the chat. You will know my name, you will know my personality, and making sure that there is a presence out there that is far reaching and consistent. Gianna asked where she could find the recording after. I do not know the answer to that, but someone will tell you. This is for sure.
The recording will be available after the end of the conference. We will put the recording on the main Now conference website after the conclusion of the conference.
No problem.
But they can have the access the slide at any time. It's already up there in the program website. So slides are already uploaded over there.
Thanks, Santita. Let's talk about if you plan to leave your current employer. You still need to network. It just looks a little bit different. So one way you can network is LinkedIn. There are a lot of connections. If you are very aggressive with your LinkedIn and you're like linked up with every person you ever met or knew, then somebody that you know knows somebody that you're trying to link up with. I don't know why, but apparently it's a really small world. And if someone is not a first connection to me, they're a second connection. Someone I know knows them. And I am not shy to say, hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so? I would love to pick their brain about X, Y, and Z. People are friends. Like your friends, you know, you're like everybody's friends if you know somebody and you have somebody in common. It's like when you go to a picnic and you don't know anybody, and at the end of the day, you're doing the hugs. It's like that. So ask for someone to introduce you. The other thing I do, which is a little bit bold, but I do it and it works, is just reach out and send friend requests to people I don't know who are at the company that I want to join in the position or touching the position that I want to have. And so before I joined Delta as an HR manager, I just started friending all these HR managers across Delta's network. And then once they accept the friend request, you can ask questions. You can say, hey, if I could quickly just bend your ear, wanted to get an unbiased opinion about what the experience is like at Delta, all of those pieces. But if you don't put yourself out there, nobody's going to come looking for you. So be aggressive in building those connections. The other thing I would recommend is if there are professional associations, joining those organizations, and they typically also have a local chapter. So I am a member of the Society for Human Resources Management, which is big in the HR field. And then I'm also a member of the local chapter in New York. And this is just making sure you're building relationships, always ready for that next opportunity. So that as you continue to grow, people can headhunt you or say, oh, I knew a person who was good at this, and bring you in. You want to be that person who has a known brand and is sought after. Understand which roles or companies are a best fit for your brand. And so it becomes critical that you really understand your brand and what you like to do. So mine is a little obvious, right? People is a little bit obvious. So let's use something a little less obvious. Let's say, order and organization. Like you like data, you like to see things be organized, you like to make sure things make sense and add up. Someone like that, I hope they're in a field where they're working with data. And so accounting, payroll, analysis, technical analysis, IT in some capacity, managing human resources information systems or other information systems, something like that that makes sense for where the interest is. And then it's easy to sell it to people who work around that because they're interested in it. And you need to be good at it. But if someone said, I'm really interested in making sure all the details are right, I want to be a fashion designer. You could, it's just a little harder because what they would value in that field is creativity, innovation, fresh ideas, right? These are the things that would make sense for that field. So really thinking about what competencies and what strengths make sense for an industry or a field or a job, and tailoring what you're good at to something that approves, applauds, and welcomes that skill set. Tailor your application. As you can imagine, unfortunately, human resources professionals just do not have the time to review every single resume like they wish they could. And so we rely very heavily on artificial intelligence to pull things out based on if words match or if there's different matches for experiences and things of that nature. And so as an example, JetBlue calls recruiting talent acquisitions. And so my resume says talent acquisitions. But if I'm looking at a job and they say recruiting, I'm going to change talent acquisitions to recruiting so that you can find me using the lingo that you are comfortable with. And so you always want to go back and change your resume to match the word types and the specific words that they're using in the job description. The other thing that you want to do is make sure you have a skills section or a competency section. And I use that to put things in there that, let's face facts, I'm otherwise not going to put on my resume. So like FMLA and California state law, these are skills that people want you to have when you're in HR, but really, where does that go on my resume? I'm busy trying to tell you what I've accomplished. And so I just have on the side a competency section and a skill section so that I can put as many words as possible on my resume to help a recruiter find me, to help artificial intelligence pull me out of a batch of a ton of candidates. And so that brings us to the topic of resume length. You're not using words just to use words. I still have a one-page resume that manages to capture 15 years of experience succinctly, and it is so beautiful. But you want it to be a good use of the interviewer's time, because sometimes when I'm walking through a 4-page resume and it's like, you've been working for 5 years, you have a 4-page resume. There's something about it that's just, be good to the recruiter and keep it succinct. And the interview is where you really want to spend the time going into the experience and talking about things that matter. And that brings us to be prepared to interview. And so it is very common at the start of an interview for the recruiter to say, walk me through your resume. They have the resume, they read the resume. They don't actually mean walk me through your resume. What they mean is tell me about your experiences, specifically your transferable experiences that would make you a good fit for this role. And so while my resume lists all these different things that I did at Delta, I'm applying for an associate manager position. Those things don't matter. What matters is that I'm strategic. It matters that I can lead the organization, that I've worked with leaders, that I can influence leaders. These are the things that matter. And those are not words I would write on a resume, but it is how I would tell you about my experience at a company. And so you want to recap your work experience when they ask you to walk them through your resume in a way that makes you valuable, that shows the path of experience that you have and how that can be transferable to the job. One of the things I do whenever I apply for a job is I copy and paste it and put it in a Word document so I have access to it later. And then when I'm invited to interview, I go back through and highlight what are the pieces I have to make sure I talk about because it's critical for this role. And then I think about where can I work that into talking about my experience? What stories can I tell that would showcase that I'm more than capable of doing what you need this person to do? And you want to highlight the experience that's going to be transferable to the role. And when you're talking through the resume, you can start anywhere on it, right? They don't say, take me back to 1980 when you first started working. They say, walk me through your resume. And I always say, I'm going to start by talking about my time at Apple, because that is where I started to develop who I am as an HR professional, so that they know there is a thought process and there is a journey that I have been on. And I recognize that there's more experience pre-Apple, but it's not relevant to what I can bring to the table today. So really organize your thoughts. And I do applaud the young lady that typed out her recap of her work experience. It's just that she wasn't saying anything that was meaningful. So don't just have some thoughts to say about your background, but make sure it's meaningful and that it's showing why you are the right fit for that job. Some common interview questions. Why are you interested in working for this company? We talked about this earlier, but you want to make sure it's something that's speaking to the company's values or to the value that you will add, not just, it's a great brand. I've always wanted to work here. I've admired it since I was little. Those answers are not moving anyone to feel like you are the right fit or that you're even passionate about the opportunity or the organization. Why are you interested in this specific role? What separates you from other candidates? We covered that. What are 3 personal strengths and weaknesses? This is one of my favorite questions. I don't ask it often, but whenever I get asked it, I'm always ready and I just knock socks off people's feet with my answers. And so I think people can very easily talk about their strengths. So you list the strength and then you use one sentence to say why you're good at it. List another strength, use another sentence to say why you're good at it or how you have incorporated it or used it throughout your career. Weaknesses are a little bit more challenging. You can't give a weakness that is a deal breaker. And so if I'm applying for a job as a paralegal and I say, oh, one of my weaknesses is filing, you and I both know the paralegal has to file. I cannot name that as a weakness. But it has to be a weakness that is forgivable and that is kind of adorable and makes sense, right? Sometimes they give you a BS answer. I don't know if anybody watches The Office, but when Michael Scott was interviewing with David Wallace and he asked for strengths and then he named 3 things and then he asked for the weaknesses. And then Michael said, well, actually, my strengths are weaknesses. See what I did there? So it's kind of like, that's not how you're supposed to do it. 3 specific strengths and then 3 specific weaknesses. As an example, one of the weaknesses that I give is that I'm overly compassionate. And that sounds like a BS weakness, right? You want someone to be compassionate, especially if they're working in HR. So I have to explain it so that the recruiter understands this is something that's real. It's not an answer that I made up for you. And so the answer that I give is I am overly compassionate in a way that sometimes makes me ineffective at my job. As an example, I've stopped an investigatory meeting before because the person I was talking to was crying. And I asked them if they wanted to talk another day. And it was a very important investigation. It needed to be done timely, but I became so compassionate that I could not finish the job. Then you want to talk about how you have overcome your weakness, right? I don't want somebody that can't do the job because they're too busy worrying when people feel emotion. So then I say, I still feel that level of compassion, but I'm cognizant that that is a weakness of mine. And I do continue to make sure that the work is done, but that I'm also able to support our employees, right? So you talk about the weakness, you give an example, you talk about how you've overcome or how you're working through your weakness. And it has to be something that makes sense. So think about something, what is a weakness that you can admit to and fix? And I can forgive you for it, not say like, oh no, we can't have you here. Like if someone is a chef and they said, oh, my weakness is I drop things all the time. You can't have food and knives on the floor all the time in the kitchen. So that would be a deal breaker. Why are you leaving your current position? Sometimes people get really free with their answer to this question and say things like, my boss sucks, I hate the team, my company's incompetent. That's fine if that's the truth. That is not a truth you can tell at an interview. And so the answer to this question needs to be something that doesn't offend the listener. Because if you would talk about your boss that way to me, how would you talk about me if I'm your manager to other people? And so why are you leaving your current position? Let's say I hate my team. What I would say in an interview is, I don't feel that I'm able to be as productive as I know I can be in my current work environment. So I'm really looking for an opportunity that has more autonomy and allows for more innovation, right? You're giving an answer that I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, this role can offer you autonomy and innovation. It's showing them that you just want to grow, not that you're bitter about anything, because you don't want to move bitter resources around. If you're bitter, I'm not bringing you to my company to taint the employees that are happy, right? So you want to show that you're positive, you're productive, and you're trying to move forward and grow. And last but not least, where do you see yourself in 5 years? The answer to this question, while it can be a job, isn't really a job. Because at most organizations, what it takes to get to the CEO position is not far. I'm 4 positions away from the CEO. And that's very normal at an organization, that there's not that many layers. And so the positions that you can grow to may not be as many as you wish there were. And so really you want to talk about opportunity. You want to talk about where you can continue to invest, where you can continue to add value to the company. You want to talk about projects that you want to get involved in, not necessarily to say, I want to be a VP, but to say, I want to be in a position to lead the team so that we can create greater impact for the culture, right? You're focusing on impact that you can make and change that you can establish with the company, ways that you can add value versus a title. That is a better and more powerful answer to this question. Oh, identify key competencies for the role of which you're interviewing. So you got the job description. Now you want to read through it and think about what competencies and skills does a person need to be successful in this job. If it's a nice company, they've done the work for you and they've already said the competencies that they need, but sometimes they hold that information close to their chest. And so you have to figure it out for yourself. But really figuring out, do you need someone who is detail oriented? Do you need someone who is problem solver, good time management, a planner, creative? Like what does it need for the person to be successful in this role? Then once you've figured out those competencies, you want to put together 6 to 8 stories that you can tell to demonstrate that you are effective in those competencies. And when you're doing your storytelling, keep in mind that the hiring manager is looking for a star. Not a superstar, a star. And so behavioral-based interview questions are asked with the idea that your past behavior will show me what you are likely to do in the future. And so I'm asking for a story that will show me what you've done in the past. And so a star is situation. What's the situation you were in? What task did you need to complete? What action did you take? And what was the result of that? And I'll give you a very simple question. I'm going to give you a second to think about your answer. Here's the interview question. It's playful, but it's good practice. Tell me about a time when you were hungry and what did you do? Take a moment and think about your answer if that were the interview question. Tell me about a time that you were hungry and what did you do? Now, I, as the candidate, am going to answer that question. I was hungry this morning. I ate a bowl of cereal. Now in the chat, tell me, do you think my interview answer was good? I said I was hungry this morning and I ate a bowl of cereal. You all are mean. What do you mean no? Oh, Colleen said it was not captivating. It was not. But here's how I can deliver the star. I was hungry this morning. Situation, I have to tell you why. Last night, I went to bed very early and it had been more than 12 hours. By the time I woke up, I was starving. So you understand the situation. I knew I needed to get something to eat right away so that I could be my best self to face the day. That's my task, get something to eat so I have energy to face the day. I went to the kitchen and realized I had a choice of eggs or cereal. I was very hungry, so I decided to eat both. I fried the egg and I poured a bowl of cereal and added milk. I ate them while watching cartoons. I felt very satisfied and had energy to do my work today. Now, there's a lot of details and extra information in there, but when we talk about the action, the hiring manager wants to understand your thought process. And so if I skipped over how I decided to eat both the eggs and the cereal, all you know is that I ate eggs and cereal, but why? That seems like a lot of food. Like I want to understand why you decided you need 2 meals for your breakfast. Someone wants to know what kind of cereal. For the sake of the story, I would say Cheerios, but in fact, I did not eat eggs or cereal today, but I did eat. I am not hungry. And so when you're delivering that star, situation, task, action, result, the majority of your story will be in action. The result will be quite short, but typically the result is what people fail to add to their story. So give that complete answer that really shows I know what I've done and I know the value that I've added. And sometimes it's not measurable, but sometimes it is. And so if it is measurable, add those additional details. If there's percentages, if there's dollar amounts, so that the recruiter can really get a good idea of the value that you've added through your results. We did an interview once where this gentleman was telling us he created this initiative and rolled it out. And everything sounded great. And then it got to the results section. He didn't mention his results. That's okay. A recruiter will ask follow-up questions. And we asked, do you have any specific results you can share about the impact of this program? And then it was like a mic drop moment. He reached in his briefcase and pulled out this like packet of information. And he said, if you flip to the last page, you'll see where we made some movement. And he had like 20 metrics in there. And he walked us through 3 specific ones that he knew would have value for us. And I was just like, we don't need to finish the interview. I want to make an offer right now. We have a process, but that's how I felt. And that's what you want to create in an interview. You want to be ready and you want to show I am capable, I am competent, I have delivered results, and I will deliver results. So be ready with your star. Now let's talk about decoding interview questions. What will your answer to an interview question reveal about you? And so when we think about, I love, tell me about a time you were hungry, that question seems so silly, but I'll tell you what your answer tells me. It tells me how you problem solve, how you work through challenges, if you are proactive. Some people's answer to that question is, I was hungry this morning, but I knew I had a busy day, so I didn't bother with breakfast. That is somebody's answer, and it is a wrong answer, because I specifically said, tell me about a time you were hungry, and what did you do about it? I guess they did give an answer. They did nothing. I'm not hiring somebody on that answer. I need to know that you're proactive and that you will take action if there is a problem. And so what will your answer reveal to the hiring manager? Let's do some practice questions. And in the chat, tell me what you think a hiring manager could get from your answer to this question. Give me an example of a time you faced conflict while working on a team. How did you handle the situation? What will your answer reveal to the recruiter or the hiring manager? Give me an example of a time you faced conflict while working on a team. How did you handle the situation? Are you a nice person? How you work well with others? Yes. How you interact with colleagues, self-awareness, stress management, conflict resolution? Yes. Managing difficulties, people interactions. How you problem solve. These are all right answers. So I can get an assessment of your teamwork, your communication skills, your relationship building, your problem solving. All of those pieces are critical. I was helping my sister, the one who's unhappy, prep for an interview. And I asked her a similar question and she told me this story and she became so angry when she told me the story. And I said, you need to work on your answer because you're bringing all this fury. And it's been a year since this story. So now I know you're someone who holds grudges and can't get over things. Like I said, your answer is so unattractive. Work on it and let's connect again in a week, which we did. I asked her the same question. She told the story better, but I could still feel resentment in her answer. And I said, you know what? Pick a different story. You cannot tell this story without revealing negative pieces of your character. So just pick a different story. And that's okay to do, to figure out something different. Respectful collaboration. Thank you, Sharisa. That's a great answer. Let's go again. Tell me about a time when you failed. How did you deal with the situation? Aw, Audrey's. Everyone is welcome in New York. Audrey said she will move to New York and be my sister. Resilience and ability to learn. Oh, if you learn from your mistakes, I love that. Perseverance, how you handle failures. These are all great answers. Overcoming challenges. Can you admit failure? Show your weakness and learn from it. Ooh, the chat is moving too fast, but we're gonna stop right there, which is, can you learn from it? It doesn't matter what the failure is. Everyone fails at something. What matters is how you recover from it. And how do you ensure that it doesn't happen again? That's the secret in that question. The answer I gave to that question, Delta asked me that question. I accidentally emailed a termination recommendation to the entire station, all of Newark. This poor girl's peers knew all her business, and it was horrible. And I didn't want to tell that story, but that's really, that's, I don't fail often, and that's the one that came to mind. That was the story that I had to tell. But it was about communicating. I let my manager know immediately, had him inform the director so that they had good awareness of it. I called the employee because even though she was suspended and wouldn't see the email, I didn't want her to hear about it from somebody else. I called her directly to apologize and tell her what happened. I then deleted that email address from my Outlook so that never again would I do that, so that I had to manually type it. It was one of those autofill situations. It was terrible. But did you learn from it? How did you handle it? And how will you make sure you do not repeat the behavior? Accountability and self-forgiveness. Don't dwell on the mistakes. It's true. And lastly, let's talk about when it's right, it's right. So I've told you about my sister, and I'm so happy to now tell you she has a new job and she loves it. And it took about a year in the making, but for that year, it was complaints and they didn't handle this process right, and they didn't do this, and this person should have called me, just like so much upset over the course of that year. And then she went to this interview and she said they only asked her 2 interview questions. She said the majority of the time they were just chatting like friends about where they like to go to hang out, what restaurants are good. She said the connection was so immediate and so strong. And so when it's right, it's right. Don't try to force things that don't make sense, because we've all done that. And sometimes you get yourself into a place where you're not happy, or it's not the right fit for you. It's not the right fit for your values. And so, yes, you can do the job. You can be successful. You can work anywhere. But the goal is to do the work and to be happy while doing it. And when it's right, and you'll know. So if opportunities pass you by, don't worry. What I tell myself every time I don't get a job, you just missed out on the best thing that was ever going to happen to you. And I believe that 100%. So when it's right, and it will come to you. So that is all the information I have for you. We're going to move into question and answer. But the last thing I will say to you is I really do love people. It's not just the thing that I say. And so I welcome all of you. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, let's connect. I would love to hear about your journey. I'm sure this is not the end of it, but that you will see many successes, and I would love to hear all about it. I'm Patricia Bailey, if you're looking for me. And I look just like my little picture in that shirt with the trees in the back. So easy to find me. And with that, I believe we can move into question and answers.
Hi, Patricia. We have like a few questions. Like first one is, someone is saying, I feel like I know my personal brand, but I don't know if others see me that way. So how do I determine that others see my personal brand?
But part of it is asking it makes me laugh, because I was talking to a friend earlier today, also a coworker, but we used to work together at JetBlue, and we had a coworker there who was so, I hate to use the word evil, but I think that is the right word for her. She was combative. She was nasty. She had negative intent for everyone that we met. And so I knew she was a horrible person. My coworker knew she was a horrible person, but her perception of herself is, I'm so nice and everyone likes me. And it's like, no, they just don't want to make HR angry. That's the truth. And so part of it is, if there are people that you know, that you trust, that you can ask them, just say, what is your perception of me? Or, my personal brand is this. Do you agree with that? And when you're talking to your leader, I think it's so important. I think that the performance evaluation process is so undervalued, underutilized, and it's just a check in the box for a lot of people and for a lot of organizations. But this is a really critical time to figure out, what am I doing? Where are my successes? What am I good at? Where do you feel like I have an opportunity where maybe what I'm doing is okay, but I could be great at it. I could be known for this. I could make change. And I hate to quote a cartoon, but clearly I've quoted Dr. Seuss, so I have no limits. There's a cartoon called Robots. And one of the premises in the cartoon is see a need, fill a need. And I think that that is a critical piece of, like, when you have a personal brand, really making sure it's established. Where's your expertise? What are you known for? What is the thing where people say, oh, go to this person. They know everything. They're good at everything. Really figure that piece out and then milk that cow.
Thank you. The next question is, what would you say if you are living to be closer to family? Because they say to not to mention family or personal issues in an interviews?
I'm sorry, you said you're living to be closer to family?
Yeah, leaving the company to be closer to your family. So do you mention that in the interview?
Oh, I see. Listen, the recruiter knows it's none of their business. So you could say something as nondescript as, oh, I just have some personal things I needed to take care of. It's if you're leaving to be closer to family, let me think about that. How would I phrase that in an interview? I'm leaving to be closer to family. I just want to make sure I understand it. So the recruiter is asking you why you're leaving your current employer, and the answer is you are leaving to be closer to family.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Give me just a second. That's a good question. Here we are. Let us say I was moving to Iowa, which would never happen. I'm moving to Iowa because I had some commitments here that I needed to take care of. And so just relocating. Yeah, I have said nothing other than that I have some commitments. They could be property, it could be people, it could be investments, it could be anything. And the recruiter will not ask you anything more.
That's good. Thank you. The next question is, in one of the slides you had, it said like it says be vocal if you intended to be remain in the same company. So what exactly that means? Like how vocal? Like in which and it's to be at the safe side, be vocal, not to cross the limit or something like that.
Yes. So vocal really means speaking up. And so there's many times when the leader thinks they are doing the right thing, but they don't know if no one tells them. And so we have to be vocal in terms of speaking our own truth. These are my interests. This is where I want to grow to. This is what I think I'm good at. And asking the leader their perception on that. One of the questions that I always encourage people to ask if they feel like, oh, I want a promotion, I say, ask your leader if they think you're ready for that opportunity. Ideally, the answer is yes. More times than not, though, the answer is no. And I said, if your leader tells you no, as a follow-up question, ask them, what would it take for me to be ready by your perception? Where do you feel I have opportunities that I can and should work on to be ready the next time the opportunity comes about? And this part is most important. Can you give me exposure to opportunities so that I can develop my skills in this area? It doesn't matter if they point something out to you and then you have no way to fix it or to grow it or to develop your skills. So they need to be a partner to that and helping you. The other piece is there's a ton of conversations you and I both know they happen behind closed doors and you are not a part of them. And so in this regard, it's critical that your leader can be an advocate for you, that they believe in you and that they know what you're interested in and that they can speak for you when you're not there to say, I've got somebody on my team who would be interested. I've got somebody on my team who would be great for this. And if your leader isn't that person, if they're not a cheerleader for you, if they don't believe in you, if you feel like they don't care if I succeed one way or the other, I would say leave. Either leave that team or leave the company. But if the people who are supposed to support you are not engaged in wanting you to be successful, you will not be successful. God knows what they're saying about you behind your back or in those closed door meetings. You need to be an environment where you are welcome, where who you are is enough, and where your leader will support you both to your face, but also behind closed doors. You need that support to be successful.
I think the Isa Pena is saying that she understood vocal as making sure to share your personal brand often, to share everyone what your personal brand is.
Yes, so you are going to share it often. The thing about your personal brand is in an interview, you have to talk about it because that is a group of people who don't know you. But in the day-to-day of your work life, you don't talk about it, you just do it. The brand is something you can see. I will give you as an example, we had to lay some people off. And so the job is you tell them what the severance package is. Feel free to reach out if there's ever anything I can do. That's the job. But that's not who I am because I care so much. So what I did, because it's my brand, but because it's also me, I also reached out to American Express, who was a partner to us at the time. And so they had worked closely with these individuals. So I reached out to their HR team and just said, listen, you know these people, you know their work ethic. Are there opportunities at American Express that would be a good fit for them? Can we bring them into the American Express family if they're having to leave our family? And American Express's HR agreed to be a partner to us. to treat our displaced employees as if they were internal to American Express, to give them preferential treatment, to allow them to reach out directly to recruiters, which we all know externals just don't have these accesses. And the other thing that I did was met with them each one-on-one just to understand what are your interests, what's your experience, what are your skills? Like, I want to make sure I can proactively look for opportunities for you and keep you in mind, even if it's something that comes up 6 months from now. And so I don't have to tell people I care about our people. They can see it from my actions. The actions will always speak for you if you're living true to your brand.
Thank you. That's a good answer. The next question is Patricia, do you have your favorite interview question?
Oh, is it my favorite question to ask or my favorite question to be asked?
Both.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I just added that part.
My favorite question to be asked. No, if you saw the hours that I took to prepare for an interview, just even a screening, you would just say, Patricia, what are you doing? And it's like, you will not catch me unprepared, right? You get your stories, you lay out your star. And when you're laying out your star, you're not writing out the whole story. I might just say situation, hungry for breakfast, task, needed to make breakfast, action, fried egg, poured bowl of cereal, results, ate full energy, right? Just some keywords that I can glance at it and be able to tell the story. And then it's got the competencies underneath. So when you ask the question, I hear the competency, then I pick a story. And the other thing about stories, just moving back into training mode for just a moment, you can tell the same story like 10 different ways. And so if you said, tell me about a time that you were innovative, I'll talk to you about when I redid our entire Take Your Child to Work Day program because it wasn't effective before. If you said, tell me about a time when you've built relationships, I could still talk to you about Take Your Child to Work Day because I had to build relationships with the TSA and the Port Authority and all the leaders in these other divisions to get their buy-in to pull that day off. Tell me about a time when you work with difficult people. Same story, because I had to bring like 80 people in to make that event happen. So I can tell the same story, but I can focus on different details so that I'm hitting the competency for what you want to hear. Now, am I going to go into an interview and tell the same story 8 different ways? No, you want to be prepared and you want to have your stories, but I don't have a favorite question because whatever you ask me, it's like you're about to get the answer that's going to knock your socks off. And the other thing that I forgot to tell you, but it's also important, is when you go into an interview, you should always have an idea of what you want to make sure you say. And if by the end of the interview, you haven't had a chance to say it, just volunteer the information. And so when they ask if you have questions, number one, you always need to have at least one question. And it shouldn't be what's the pay or when's the start date or what are next steps, but it should be more like, what goals does the team need to accomplish over the next year and how will this role support that? You're showing interest in the company, in the role, and what it's going to accomplish and what you can contribute. And you're taking these answers and you're going to sneakily reference things that were said in the interview in your thank you letter to show, again, that you are the right fit. It's a bit like if you like chess, then you would love interviewing. Favorite question to ask people? I don't have a favorite question. I just love hearing people's answers and their stories and their passion. I interviewed someone for an editorial assistant food position. And within the first 5 minutes, she just was telling me, it was just small talk. It was just asking like, oh, how have you been doing everything? How have you been doing during the pandemic? And she said, yeah, I've been doing okay. I've been traveling. I just got back from California. I was out there learning how to sustainably farm, what was it? Mushrooms and oysters. And I was like, oh, you just love food and you happen to be a journalist, but whether or not you get this job, your passion for food will continue. And that's what you want. You want someone where their passion is clear and you get to hear and see and feel that in the interview. I just love the experience.
That's wonderful. The next question is, can you outline how you reduce your 15 years into single page resume? Bullets, paragraphs, how does it look?
Sure. There isn't really, oh no, it's not on here. I'm so sorry. I'm on my work computer. I was just going to pull it up and show it to you. And so I'm sure you've seen the resumes where there's a like a border on the left side, like a ribbon on the left side. And so on the left side, I put, and it's like a short ribbon. It's like a quarter of the page, and then the other 3/4 is the resume proper. But it's got the contact information, and then it has education, and then it has skills, competencies, and I think one other thing. But you fit them in the ribbon because they're kind of short. And then on the right side is where I have related experience. And then it's, title, company, years. And then I talk through some key work that I did there, title, company, years. And so it fits perfectly on one page. It means that all my experience isn't there. So I've had to, over the years, delete things and add the newest thing. But typically, as you're growing in your career, the oldest thing that you're getting rid of anyway is something that doesn't matter for what you're doing now. So I had to knock off when I was an HR assistant. Big whoop, I'm a leader now. I don't need that. And so as you continue to grow, the little things that you knock off won't matter.
Thank you. The next question is, if you received an offer, but you are still interviewing for another job you applied for, how can you phrase that you need more time to get back to them after the offer?
I mean, there really isn't a good way except to be honest about it. What I think is terrible is when people accept an offer and then like a week or two after they start, resign because what they really wanted has come to pass. And whenever someone says, like, what do you think I should do? I say, you need to do what you want to do, but just know that you're going to burn that bridge. You can never again return to that company or anyone who's worked with you throughout this experience, because there's something about that that's a little unprofessional. But just be transparent and say, thank you so much for the offer. I'm really excited about it. I have received another offer, or am in the tail ends of receiving an offer from another company. Would it be okay if I get back to you within the next week? Now, if you honestly think you're not going to have an answer for like 3 weeks, you just need to make a decision. You can't put them on hold for 3 weeks unless it's like the CEO of a corporation, and then you can do whatever you want because they will wait for you. But typically they're working against the clock, and the team has really had to step up and work extra hard to cover while that position is vacant. So it's not an unlimited time that they can hold it. But I think a week is fair if you're saying that you're waiting for some details to come through for another offer, and you want to make sure you make the best decision for yourself.
Thank you. The next question is, what ideas do you have in your experience in working with unions? The UC system is not as receptive to our unions as we might like. Any suggestions on bettering this relationship?
It's complicated. My last 3 employers had unions. I feel that you have a sense of who I am from this hour that we've been together, but I liked the gray because it means I can do things in that gray where I'm not saying I like make special deals or anything like that, but it means I can have grace and humanity. And so when we've had a union contract, it is very black and white. And so I feel that piece is removed, where it's just like, what the contract says is what I have to do. And I hate that feeling because what the contract says isn't always what I want to do. I'm a person that's like, oh, we're going to coach you. We're going to give you support. We're going to do this. How about another coaching? How about this? Okay, now I'm going to write you up. But I gave you like 30 chances first. And I feel like, with the current union contract we have, it's like, you coach them, you write them up, final warning, that's it. And I'm just like, it's not really my style, but I get it. And so I think a part of it is just having respect for, and this is for leaders to have, but to have respect for the union. And so I think when a union is voted in, there is some resentment because there is a perception that we couldn't represent you the way you wanted to be represented. So you chose someone else to represent you. So I do think there is a little resentment that goes with it. It's America. I'm, freedom of choice. If this is your choice, this is your choice. And so there does have to be more respect and acknowledgement of this is a choice and this is what it means. The other piece of it, though, is union. I need you to do your part. Like, I need you to represent our people and stand up for our people and be these ferocious lions for our people. And I think that's where it's like a little murky for me, because it's like, I care so much about the people. I would give away the moon, but I would probably bankrupt the company trying to straddle both sides of the fence. So I stay on my side. But I do think it starts with leaders adapting their perception of why the union is here and how can we work together to best support our teams. And I don't think that mindset is there. I think it's typically an us versus them, and it does create a very combative environment. To be clear, I do not work at nor am affiliated with UC Berkeley, so I'm not sure what the lay of the land is with the union. And so I'm blindly believing that there is not that open communication and trust and desire to meet on common ground to do the best for the people. Speculation, to be clear.
Thank you. Just one last question. Do you have any tips for negotiating salary based on brand?
So part of it is determining how badly do they want you. So there's no harm in going for the negotiation, right? Worst case, they say, this is the best we can do. And then you have to decide if you want to, do you want to do it or not? But if they want you badly enough, like they will move mountains. Like I've had leaders yell at me to like make an offer happen. And it's like, don't yell at me. Tell me where the money's coming from. You have to fund this. I will support you. You have to fund it. If you feel like maybe they want me, maybe they don't, like it's never going to happen that you counter offer and then they say, never mind. Like that's not going to happen. The worst that can happen is they come back and say, this is the best offer. And so when you're doing the counter offer, what you want to make sure you are doing is articulating why more money makes sense. Talk through the value that you can add, the experiences that you've had that would equal more money. I had a friend that counter offered a job. And what she talked about, she's in Long Island and is going to be commuting to Manhattan. It's like almost a 2-hour commute. So she's like, for me, for it to be worth my while, like you're going to have to do another $10,000. Now, part of it is you knew it was a 2-hour commute when you applied. But the other part is if I want you, I'll pay the $10,000. Do I really want to lose my top candidate for $10,000? And every employer's tolerance and even ability to kind of pivot with salary is a little bit different, but there is no harm in asking. Go for it.
Thank you. That's a wonderful answer. Thank you, Patricia. It was for the great presentation and sharing the tips on how we can develop our personal brand. Bye, everyone.